In a luxurious establishment, a princess with bright green eyes, who is the daughter of the Duke of Iano, sits quietly. She hears someone addressing her while a table in front of her is filled with delicious food, specifically beef steak. The sweet maid next to Nessie starts talking about the high-quality meat from Arta Ranch that was used for today's dish, and the maid praises the tenderness of the meat. While everyone is having salmon, Nessie looks towards the next table and notices a majestic-looking man, who turns out to be Duke. Strangely, he serves meat only to Lady Iano, which sparks curiosity among the people around them. Ines begins to cut her meat into smaller pieces, wondering why her food is different from the others. She questions if she did something wrong. Today's banquet is organized by Duke Kaizak Aljert himself, originally from the Berksela Empire. After searching the crowd, Nessie finally spots the Duke among the beautiful ladies and gentlemen. She wants to understand something and asks him to speak privately. At first, the Duke simply looks at her in silence, but suddenly a smile appears on his face. This smile brings reassurance to Ines and many others, and they give their consent. The people surrounding them made them feel uneasy. The couple walked through the enormous hall, overhearing whispers about the Duke's monstrous reputation and how he had just spoken privately with Princess Iano. Their families were close, but Ines couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. However, her discomfort was interrupted when the Duke called her by name. The lady turned towards him as Aljert kindly asked her to be nicer to everyone. Aljert, known as the best swordsman in the Berksela Empire, was chosen by the sacred swordcar Leiden himself, which is why the Duke earned the nickname, Monster Duke. Despite his cold and cruel reputation, he possessed strong leadership qualities and knew how to pretend to be kind. He advised Ines to be more attentive to her husband, as they didn't want others to know that their marriage was arranged. Nessie promised to be more careful. The Duke put on a sweet, fake smile, becoming even more charming. Aljert wondered if he could now walk beside Ines and wrap his arm around her waist. In a whisper, he apologized for his enthusiasm and assured her that he would respect her boundaries. Ines blushed, feeling her breath grow hot, and realized that her legs couldn't support her. Aljert noticed her struggle and asked if she was all right. In vain, she replied that everything was normal. She clutched her dress, finding it difficult to breathe. The Duke approached once more, concerned for her well-being. Aljert gently touched her cheek, noting that she seemed to have a fever as her face turned red. Ines yelled, her face turning even redder as she pushed the prince away slightly and stared at him in disbelief. The Duke stayed silent, bowing weakly while Nessie started apologizing for her behavior, covering her mouth with her hand without knowing why. Kaizak frowned and made a decision for himself. Nessie pondered how difficult it was to call a boy by his name. The Duke, standing beside her, informed her that she couldn't address him by his name forever. This made her wonder when Nessie would announce her engagement, but Ines couldn't think about it seriously at the moment. Everything was too complicated and inconvenient. Their marriage wasn't a celebration of love. They were simply fulfilling their duty and uniting the two most powerful families. To hide this truth, the couple had to act in front of the public, pretending to be deeply in love. This union would give them a great opportunity to acquire more lands, and for Ines, it was a chance to revive her family. If Nessie continued to distance herself from him, no one would believe they were lovers. They had to pretend to be sincerely in love, all for the benefit of the Iano family. Ines asked for forgiveness and promised to address the Duke by his first name from now on. Aljert smiled affectionately at the lady and expressed his happiness about it. Nessie felt her heart still racing when she called the Duke by his name. Kaizak approached Nessie, standing uncomfortably close. The Duke reached out his hand to the young woman and confessed his nervousness about everything. He gently caressed Nessie's cheek and asked her to call each other by their names more often, so that it would become natural for them in the future. As he withdrew his hand from her cheek, the Duke tenderly ran his fingers through Ines' now blonde hair. Ines agreed that he was right, and then Kaizak's gaze dramatically changed. He looked at Nessie, and his heart started beating faster. Out of nowhere, the Duke pulls Ines closer and declares that they should begin now. Their faces draw nearer and Aljert remarks that today it was she who had the tastier meat, implying that she will have to work harder. Ines finds herself pressed against the wall while the Duke looms over her, preventing her from escaping. Kaizak observes Nessie, her face flushed with embarrassment. The flustered girl can only speculate about what will happen next. Suddenly, Kaizak moves back slightly, catching the young woman's attention. With a charming smile, she suggests that they take things slowly. Confused, Ines looks at the Duke, unsure of what to do next and expecting something entirely different. Her blush deepens, revealing that she had been thinking about something completely unrelated. Kaizek warns that Ines's delicate heart won't be able to withstand such pressure and might even burst. Algert takes hold of Ines' slender wrist and instructs her to look at something. As he gently caresses her wrist, he remarks that she is all flushed, making her wonder if her heart is pounding so hard. However, Ines can only focus on the burning sensation in her wrist. The Duke shakes her hand and saying that this should be all right for now, Kaizek leads her to a room, mentioning that he wants to show her something first. He seats her on the sofa and explains that her marriage contract is in front of her, with several proposals that he wishes to amend. Ines, however, is completely clueless and fails to comprehend anything. The Duke sits across from her and expresses his desire to correct point 29, but Nessie's interest is immediately piqued by what is written there. Blushing once again, she realizes the nature of the content. Algert begins to explain that this paragraph specifically refers to the physical aspect of the marital contract, but before he can finish, a scream interrupts him. The embarrassed heroine requests to stop discussing the topic as it makes her feel extremely uncomfortable. Kaizek comprehends the situation but still acknowledges that this is a crucial aspect in a marriage. Ines lets out a deep sigh upon realizing that this is the main reason their families brought them together. The Duke smiles and expresses his desire to share a bed with Nessie every day. Ines starts to ponder if this will be a daily occurrence, but even if it is, she cannot refuse Kaizek as producing an heir as her primary duty. However, Algert insists on them having a shared bedroom as sleeping alone is too much for him. After a brief silence, Nessie questions him if he hasn't always slept alone. Kaizek admits that he is used to it, but his loneliness has now peaked. He fears that if this continues, he will perish from solitude. The lady observes that he is not one to welcome strangers and is also particular about point 33, which he dislikes. He mentions that it only happens once a week, but it should change depending on the situation. He believes he is justified and can make changes as necessary. To address the issue, Nessie suggests that he create a schedule that suits him or they should spend some time apart. He reacts by tightly gripping the sheets in his hand, causing Nessie to inquire about his sudden action. He dismisses it as nothing. Kaizek asks if she agrees to modify the third point, to which she responds positively after signing the document. The Duke then reveals that there is something more crucial to discuss. Kaizek admits that he is not fond of it either, referring to the last point. The lady recalls that section is about divorce, prompting Ines to question why it needs correction. Algert abruptly insists on its removal, causing Nessie to look on in shock as the paper with the contentious issue tears apart. Nessie remains bewildered, while Kaizek maintains that the point is unnecessary. He says they'll be together until she dies, but then corrects himself by saying that even after her death, the Duke will still be her husband. Ines was so distracted by his fierce gaze, that she forgot to ask why she was the only one served beef steak. One dark night in a spacious room. Candles were burning, and you could hear Nessie's silent sighs and see the tears flowing from the tired and blushing princess's eyes. The Duke barely squeezed her hand, he simply hovered over her. Nessie's exhausted body was already covered in bites and hickeys. Ines could only think that if she knew what he was like at night, she would probably rewrite her contract again. Ines' first memories were of the strong smell of alcohol. Ines' real father was a loser who only cared about gambling and alcohol. She doesn't remember her own mother at all, but she heard that she ran away because she couldn't stand her father's attitude towards her. Ines remembers sitting in a dark corner, hungry all day, and living like that. Her father blamed her, always saying that Ines was as useless as her mother. The little girl barely avoided the flying bottles of alcohol. Ines ran, while her evil father's screams, unexpectedly running into an unknown man and then fell to the ground from the impact. She asked the man who he was, while looking at him in amazement. This man was standing in the hallway right in front of her, which was extremely unexpected because it was unlikely that anyone would come to visit this house. He extended his hand towards her, causing the girl to scream, expecting another blow. The man gazed at her silently as her father behind him bombarded him with questions about his identity and why he was trespassing by opening someone else's door. He proceeded further into the house, still accompanied by the continuous shouts of his father demanding answers. Suddenly, the stranger proposed to buy the child, making her father wonder if he was willing to sell his daughter. He had heard that it would be better to wait until the price increased, and he could even get 100 gold coins for her due to her beautiful face. After the deal was sealed, he purchased Ines for 1,000 gold coins. With this money, he could afford several grand houses. As soon as he received the money, Ines noticed her father's back as he left to buy alcohol without even saying goodbye to her. The stranger called the girl over, extended his hand, and declared that her name was now Ines Iano. From that peculiar day onwards, she became his daughter. He led her to a vast house and informed her that this was their new home. Ines Iano was born. She might have already known, but they informed her that the empire and the imperial family were under the control of two duchies symbolizing the sword and the shield, with the Ducat of Iano being known as the shield. As the man guided her down a wide hallway, she pondered why such important people would adopt a seemingly insignificant girl. Her thoughts were interrupted when the man asked her to look at a full-length painting of a beautiful girl. He explained that this girl, born into their family, possessed the power to cleanse water, cultivate various types of vegetation, and heal people. It was a unique and special ability that all the girls from Iano possessed, although females were born very rarely in the family. The Duke revealed that Ines' real father is from the Iano family, an illegitimate son who was completely unaware of his origins. This is why the blood of the family flows within her. The man sat in front of Ines and informed her that she was the only girl in this family. Ines is an extremely special girl and she should know it. She thought about these words from the man in front of her because they were the first kind words she had ever heard in her life. Ines walked among the maids with books in her hands, thinking that they would not abandon her since she was special. Ines was encouraged when she realized that everything would definitely be fine. Ines cannot disappoint this man who is the only one who treats her well. Ines grabs the dress without understanding if there are other members of her family. Ines fears that if her family appears, they will try to sell her. When Ines began to worry about this, her family had already returned from a long trip in front of Ines. They find 3 people, an adult woman and 2 children who look a lot like her. The man asks Ines to greet them and Ines only gets closer to him. The mother of the family approaches the girl and tells her with admiration how pretty she is. Ines is embarrassed by this and thinks about how good the woman next to her smells. Ines stands up awkwardly and the children are told that they too should know each other. One of the brothers asks the second why the new baby is so tall if they say that when children are born they are small, but the second explains that it is all because she is an adopted daughter. The first brother immediately flies towards Ines. Ines falls to the ground from so much pressure and the woman tells her son that he scared Ines and that he should be more attentive to her. Call introduced himself and inquired about her name. She stumbled over her words, and responds Ines. However, Call took the lead and reached out to shake her hand. Suddenly, the second brother intervened. Cliff questioned the second brother's actions, asking why he was being aggressive towards someone younger. The second brother introduced himself as Cliff and expressed his hope for everyone to get along. This marked the beginning of Ines's new family, and she no longer felt alone. It was the start of a new life for her, filled with amazing experiences that were incomparable to anything else. Ines and her brothers found joy in spending time together in the spacious courtyard. Every day, she enjoyed delicious and hot meals at any time and slept peacefully in a soft bed. It felt like she was living in a fairy tale, like a little princess. 6 years passed in this beautiful place, like a dream. One day, the mother of the family announced her pregnancy, and Ines was told that she would have to take care of her little sister once she was born. However, the birth of a girl named Risha was a blessing for the family, but unfortunately, the mother's health deteriorated significantly after giving birth. It was clear that she was exhausted. Before leaving them, the mother's last request was for Ines to take care of Risha. Now, Ines was responsible for her youngest sister, who already displayed remarkable abilities from a young age. Princess Risha Iano quickly developed her purification skills, while Ines watched over her. Ines realized that using her own powers would have a negative impact on her body. The older sister reminds once more that she had requested not to use her power too often, as it would drain Risha's energy quickly. Risha is cautioned to be cautious and advised to first learn to control and utilize her power correctly. When Risha asks Ines how to master this particular force, Ines herself is unable to provide an answer. She is clueless about how to harness power, let alone control it. However, she recalls reading in a book that one can block it by following the sensations of the heart. Even though she lacks knowledge, the girl promises to assist Risha and be a supportive elder sister. Nessie reflects on how Risha's abilities have already manifested. Ines pondered when her own strength will emerge. Ines invites the girl to have cake, to which she eagerly agrees. Despite the differences, Ines never resented her sister for starting to use her power. The child is too innocent and beautiful to be disliked. In a dimly lit room, Ines sits thoughtfully under the lamp's glow, realizing that her family will never reject her. Ines, on the other hand, is becoming anxious as she struggles to receive power but continues to study and learn about it. She hopes that one day she will also possess such abilities. Risha rushes to the head of the family, excitedly informing him that her sister's thesis will soon be published in an academic journal. The man beams with pride. Ines thanks him. However, despite the love and support, Ines feels a growing desire to awaken her own powers. As she tightens her hand, she understands that if she is special, she needs a special power. She asks God to have mercy on her. Her father is supportive of Ines, regardless of her abilities. Ines, however, is convinced her abilities will manifest. Despite this, her father believes in Ines and advises her not to get upset or punish herself, no matter what happens. He assures her that they will always be by her side because she is their daughter. On that day, Ines didn't fully comprehend what her father was telling her. She didn't understand that her true worth wasn't solely based on her abilities. Suddenly, her father's condition worsens and he asks for forgiveness for burdening Ines with his fragile health. However, Ines opposes, knowing that without her father, she wouldn't be as happy as she is now. Ines is her father's favorite daughter and he asks her to be happy in the future. In response, she reassures him that everything is fine. Ines is determined to always be a part of the Iano family, no matter what happens. She will use all her strength to protect them. Her words bring tears to her father's eyes. Ines believes that she shouldn't trouble her father and should be the strong daughter of the Iano family. She lies down with her head resting on the bed and expresses gratitude to her father for everything. She is deeply sorry that things have turned out this way and her emotions are evident. It is also a difficult time for her brothers, but she is determined to repay the kindness her father has shown her, even if it means sacrificing her own life. In the Winter Palace, there is a conversation about how they did everything they could, but unfortunately, Risha's pneumonia symptoms are worsening. Initially, Risha was already weak, so further treatment would only worsen her condition. The doctor informs her that Risha will last at most a week, but Ines refuses to believe it. She denies everything that is happening at the moment. Ines, hiding behind a pillar, overhears a conversation about a prophecy. Cliff questions about how to break the curse in the Iano family, and the high priestess himself has made a prophecy about them. Ines wonders if this is connected to the deaths of the Iano daughters and if Risha is now under a curse. Ines listens as the two discusses the curse, but suddenly she sees her Risha at the window, dressed only in a nightgown and running in the cold with bare legs. Ines quickly rushes to her and asks why she came out in this weather. She hugs Risha, wrapping her up and telling her that her whole body has turned cold. Ines asks her to come inside because she already unwell. Suddenly, Ines notices a bright flash above both them. It turns out to be Risha's purifying ability, but why would it be like that? Purifying ability is usually achieved through sacrificing a person's strength. This is why Risha hasn't been able to use her powers, as it puts a lot of strain on her body. And yet, Risha is currently standing in the snow, using her purification power unexpectedly. The little princess asks her sister if she is dying, but Ines can't find the words to respond. Risha's death is inevitable. Risha touches her sister's cheek with her small hand, saying that she wants to play with her and be with her. She apologizes for not being able to keep her promise of playing together when she gets better. Ines is completely lost and doesn't know what to do. Risha starts talking about what she wants her sister to promise her when she dies, but Ines doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't want to believe it. She mentally begs Risha not to leave her like this. Suddenly, Cliff runs quickly towards the sisters, shouting their names. Ines is sitting on her knees in a pile of snow, and next to her, Risha is getting worse. Suddenly, Risha collapsed, losing consciousness, and blood spurted from her mouth onto the snow, with only a thin trickle of blood flowing from her lips. Ines desperately pleaded with her older brother to save their sister, tears streaming down her face. Ines supported her brother as he carried Risha into the unknown. This little girl, only 10 years old, had tragically died, her small body succumbing to the cold. Her face already covered with a white cloth. Silently and sorrowfully, he entered Ines' room, where Ines was sobbing. Cliff examined his sister and began to talk about how her legs were stained with Risha's blood. Ines grabbed the sheet, expressing her frustration at not hearing what her little sister had wanted to say. Cliff sat beside his sister, embracing her, trying to offer some comfort. Ines couldn't ignore their mother's final request. If only she had the strength, she believed she could have saved all three of them. But she felt so useless. These people had brought her so much happiness, yet she couldn't do anything for them. It had been a difficult month since they lost Risha. Ines sat silently and exhausted in her bed, feeling utterly alone. As she stared at the floor, she wondered why she was the only one left. Risha was gone, so why should she continue to live if she couldn't protect anyone? Ines contemplated cutting her throat, hoping to be reunited with her little sister. Memories of her mother's words about taking care of her sister flooded her mind, followed by her father's words about his beloved son and his plea for her to be happy. Finally, Risha's plea for forgiveness echoed in her thoughts, but she managed to pull herself back from the edge. She must do everything she can for her family. Ines discovered a way to harness power similar to Iano's purification, but it required monster blood. Since studying monsters was forbidden in the Empire, it was risky. Despite requesting permission to conduct her studies, the request was denied by the Crown Prince. Ines refused to give up, but nothing seemed to work. She was at a loss. Thoughts of the oracle, the Iano family curse, and Cliff's words haunted her. Suddenly, Cliff ran towards her, shouting inquiring if she went asking the butler about the family curse. After Risha's death, Ines secluded herself in her room, fixated on the curse and the oracle. Ines awkwardly tried to calm her brother down, but he couldn't understand how to stay calm. Ines explained she's in pain and wanted to discuss the matter calmly. Cliff apologized. Ines finally admitted that the day Risha fainted she had overheard his conversation with the butler, but she didn't think he would tell her anything, so she asked the butler instead. Cliff's expression grew sadder, and he reached out to his sister. Ines found it strange to see him so upset, but now that her brother knew everything, she had to uncover the truth. Perhaps then, she could finally break the family curse. Ines asked for forgiveness for not being able to be there for Risha, and now she had to focus on protecting the Iano family. She urged her brother to tell her the truth about everything. She comprehends fully that the oracle mentioning the curse of Iano is somehow related to the family. She is eager to know the meaning behind it all and how everything is connected. After Cliff's silence, she demands answers as a member of the Iano family. However, he remains silent. Eventually, he breaks down and accidentally screams, making it known that the curse is specifically related to her. Taking Cliff's hand, she tells him that this is the only course of action left. Ines sincerely asks her brother what she should do next. She promises Cliff that she will do everything necessary, as it is important to both of them. Pleading with Cliff to tell her the truth, she notices his doubtful expression. Now, Ines is traveling in a carriage, looking out the window calmly and lost in thought. She recalls her recent conversation where Cliff expressed his desire for her not to sacrifice herself. He will attempt to break the curse without involving Ines. Ines wants to say more to her older brother, but he abruptly ends the conversation and walks away, leaving her with those words as the last she heard from him that day. Avoiding the topic every time, Ines realizes that she must uncover the truth on her own. As she closes her eyes, contemplating how she wishes to sleep, she is plagued by restless nights. Suddenly, huge beams begin to fall, falling right through the carriage. Ines screams in fear, unable to comprehend the chaos unfolding around her. Upon examining the carriage, she discovers huge beams piercing through the ceiling.